coastal city of Brighton is home to two of Britain's most famous piers. One is a bustling tourist attraction. The other is a dormant relic of days gone by. The Brighton West Pier has stood since 1866. In 1975, the pier was deemed unsafe and closed to the public. Since then, it has stood practically untouched for nearly a quarter of a century, left to the mercy of the elements. In 2003, the old pier encountered 3 disasters in as many months. Following twin collapses either side of the new year, Brighton's Victorian landmark was engulfed by flames on March the 28th in a suspected arson attack. For 3 hours, the flames raged, reducing what was left of the old concert hall to a blackened iron skeleton. Opened on the 6th of October 1866, the West Pier was one of dozens built around the coast of Britain in a great era of pier construction. At this time, piers became symbolic of British seaside resorts, and so the pier became a major emblem of Brighton. Most of the piers at this time were made primarily as a landing stage, bridging ship and shore, whereas the West Pier was made for the function of promenading. During the 1890s, the pier began to transform from a promenade pier to a pleasure pier, with new attractions including a theatre, a concert hall, professional divers, and a public swimming pool. In its 1920s heyday, the pier was visited by over 2 million people every year. The danger of invasion saw the pier closed for the majority of the Second World War. With its post-war reopening, the evolution into a funfair pier was complete. But the funfair attractions were not a successful response to the challenge of the post-war era, and the pier began to decline in popularity. On the 30th of September 1975, the pier was closed. With closure, the pier became increasingly derelict and ruined. Like so many others, the West Pier looked unlikely to make it through the 20th century. Though the once sparkling jewel of Brighton still stands, it is now merely a shadow of its former self. In the pier's darkest hour, in 1976, a group came together to form the Brighton West Pier Trust. Today, its sole aim is to restore Britain's only Grade 1 listed pier to its Victorian glory.
Well, the plan for the pier before the disaster and after the disaster is to restore it to how it was in its heyday, which is the early 1920s. Internally, the actual activities on the pier will be contemporary, and that's why we haven't committed ourselves to very, very specific things, because they've got to be state-of-the-art and cutting edge. Someone or some people don't want the restoration to happen, and they first of all torched the pavilion, thinking that once that had gone, there could be no restoration. Well, they were proved wrong about that, and in fact, probably the restoration progress has been faster since that event. And so they obviously thought they'd have another go and see whether burning the concert hall would have the desired effect. We're hoping they were completely unsuccessful in that, as you can see, the concert hall's still standing. Unfortunately, it's also still smouldering.
10 minutes after this interview, the flames once again began to rage, destroying what was left of the 1920s pavilion. Even before the recent disasters, there have always been conflicts in opinion about what should be done with the West Pier, and more recently, who is responsible for the arson attacks.
I think the people who burn it down are not, in fact, people who don't want the pier. I think it's the people who are going to rebuild the pier, and I think it's cheaper for them to burn it down than to knock it down the way they're supposed to.
I'd like them to put that fire out that's raging away and rebuild it as soon as possible.
Well, to be honest with you, it was such an attraction, even though it was broken. But to be fixed and rebuilt as clubs and theatre, it would be really perfect for the town. It will benefit a lot of people as well.
The West Pier should be restored, put back to where it was originally. They've got the money to do it.
The noble family that own the Palace Pier, they're so frightened of a little bit of competition. I mean, that's got nothing, that building over there. You know, this is history.
The second of Brighton's famous piers, the Palace Pier, now renamed the Brighton Pier, opened in 1899. Since 1984, the owners of the Grade 2 listed pier have spent millions on upgrading work and the introduction of theme park rides. With over 2 million visitors a year, it has become the most popular tourist attraction in Sussex. The owners of the pier have challenged the rebuilding of the West Pier in the European Court, claiming that it would be unfair competition. The Brighton Pier did not wish to participate in the making of this documentary.